She mocked the human's tiny weapon until he pulled out the bigger one hidden below. The azure-skinned woman slumped against the grimy wall of the Celestial Serpent, a dingy tavern on the outskirts of Proxima Station. Vera Lex, once a promising xenobiology student, now a desperate refugee, counted the meager credits in her palm for the third time. Still not enough for passage off this forsaken rock. "Damn it," she muttered, tucking a strand of silvery white hair behind her ear. The turquoise of her eyes darkened as she scanned the room filled with the dregs of a dozen different species. 3 standard weeks since her research vessel had been attacked by raiders, leaving her stranded here with nothing but the clothes on her back and a handful of academic credentials nobody cared about. The station authorities had been less than helpful. Apparently, being the sole survivor of a regrettable incident didn't entitle her to much beyond a perfunctory incident report. A commotion erupted at the bar. 2 burly Vargarians, reptilian thugs with a reputation for violence, were hassling the bartender, their scaled hands gripping energy blades. Vera shrank further into her corner, hoping to remain invisible. The last thing she needed was... The tavern door hissed open, and a tall figure strode in. Human, male. His broad shoulders and confident gait immediately commanded attention. Unlike the hodgepodge of mismatched armor most mercenaries wore, his gear was well-maintained, practical but clearly expensive. The insignia on his shoulder marked him as part of the Crimson Vanguard, one of the more reputable mercenary outfits in the sector. The human's eyes, a deep brown that reminded Vera of the rare Terran coffee she'd once splurged on, scanned the room with practiced efficiency before landing on the Vargarians. His expression hardened. "Gentlemen," he called out, his voice carrying an easy authority, "I believe the establishment has a strict no-weapons policy." The larger Vargarian turned, baring needle-like teeth. "Mind your business, human, unless you want to be gutted." The mercenary sighed as if genuinely disappointed. "Always the hard way." What happened next was almost too fast for Vera to follow. The human moved with startling speed, drawing and firing a compact pistol in one fluid motion. Instead of plasma bolts, it discharged some kind of adhesive that instantly hardened, pinning one Vargarian's arm to the bar. Before the second could react, the mercenary had closed the distance between them, delivering a precise strike to a nerve cluster at the base of the reptilian's skull. The thug collapsed like a sack of mineral ore. "Anyone else feeling confrontational tonight?" the human asked pleasantly, holstering his weapon. The tavern remained silent. As the station's security finally arrived to collect the subdued Vargarians, the human's gaze swept the room again, and this time, locked onto Vera. She froze, wondering if her desperate circumstances were somehow written across her face. He approached her table with casual confidence. Up close, she could see the fine lines around his eyes, the faint scar that ran along his jawline. Not young, but certainly in his prime. "You look like someone who's a long way from home," he said, sliding into the seat across from her without invitation. "What makes you say that?" Vera replied, defensive. He shrugged. "The way you're nursing that drink, the way you're counting your credits when you think no one's looking, the quality of your clothes, too good for this place despite being worn for days." A half smile played on his lips. "Plus, your species, Azurian, right, aren't exactly common in this sector." Vera stiffened. "I don't need charity." "Good, I'm not offering any." He extended a hand. "Jason Summers, tactical specialist with the Crimson Vanguard. And we're actually recruiting." Vera stared at his hand, then back at his face, searching for deception. "I'm not a soldier." "Neither were most of us, originally." His smile widened. "But you look like someone who learns fast, and right now, that's exactly what we need." She hesitated, then took his hand. His grip was firm, warm. "Vera Lex." "Well, Vera Lex," Jason said, "how would you like to get off this station and make some actual credits while you're at it?" 3 days later, Vera found herself at the Vanguard's makeshift training facility on the station's lower level, surrounded by equipment she barely recognized. Jason had vouched for her, somehow convincing his commander that an Azurian xenobiologist might be useful for their upcoming contract. Something about investigating mysterious phenomena on a frontier world. "Ready for your first lesson?" Jason appeared beside her, carrying what looked like a child's toy, a small silver pistol with intricate engravings along its barrel. Vera couldn't help it. She laughed. "Are you kidding? Is this a weapon or a toy? Jason's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes glinted. Why don't you try it and find out? Still smirking, Vera took the pistol. It was surprisingly heavy for its size. She aimed at the target drone hovering 20 meters away, squeezed the trigger. The world exploded. A force like nothing she'd ever felt slammed through her arm, her shoulder, her entire body. The next thing she knew, she was flat on her back, staring up at the ceiling, dust settling around her. Jason's face appeared above her, that infuriating half-smile firmly in place. The Whisper Mark III, kinetic compression technology, packs the punch of a rifle 10 times its size. He extended his hand. Still think it's a toy? Vera glared at him, but took his hand anyway. As he pulled her up, their faces came close. Too close. For a moment, she found herself noticing the flecks of gold in his brown eyes, the way his smile reached them. I think, she said, brushing dust from her combat vest, that you could have warned me. And miss that look on your face? Not a chance. He handed the pistol back to her. Try again. This time, brace yourself. Vera took the weapon, determined not to embarrass herself a second time. You enjoy this, don't you? Watching me fail? On the contrary, Jason replied, his voice suddenly serious. I'm trying to keep you alive. Out there, mistakes get people killed. Something in his tone made her pause. There was history there. Painful history. Show me how to hold it properly, she said, her own voice softer than intended. As Jason positioned himself behind her, adjusting her stance, his hands guiding hers, Vera became acutely aware of his proximity, the solid warmth of him. And despite herself, despite all her circumstances, she felt something stir. Curiosity, perhaps, or something more dangerous. Ready? He murmured, his breath warm against her ear. Vera nodded, focusing on the target, pushing away all other thoughts. This time, when she fired, she was ready for the recoil. The shot went wide, but she remained standing. Better, Jason said, stepping back. Much better. And despite everything, Vera found herself smiling back at him. The next morning found Vera on the Vanguard's primary training deck, surrounded by 24 mercenaries of various species, though humans clearly dominated the ranks. Jason had instructed her to report at 0600 hours for a live-fire exercise, emphasizing that this would determine her role in the upcoming mission. Think of it as an aptitude test, he told her. Everyone has hidden talents. Let's find yours. Now, as she stood awkwardly in borrowed combat gear that hung loose on her slender frame, Vera wondered if she'd made a terrible mistake. The other recruits, mostly hardened veterans looking for a new outfit, eyed her with barely concealed skepticism. Attention! A gruff voice cut through the murmurs. Commander Donovan Hayes strode onto the deck, his imposing figure demanding immediate respect. His silver-streaked hair and the network of scars across his weathered face spoke of decades in the field. Today's exercise is simple, Hayes announced. 3 combat scenarios, 3 different weapon loadouts. Your performance determines your assignment, or whether you get one at all. His cold gaze swept over the recruits, lingering momentarily on Vera. Summers vouch for you, Azurian. Don't make him regret it. Jason appeared at her side as the group dispersed toward the simulation chambers. Don't let Hayes intimidate you. He tests everyone like this. And if I fail, Vera asked, adjusting her ill-fitting armor. Then I look like an idiot, Jason replied with that infuriating half-smile. So don't fail. The first scenario was straightforward, a hostage situation requiring precision shooting. Vera fumbled with the sniper rifle, her shots going wide. The second wasn't much better, a close-quarters combat simulation where her lack of training was painfully obvious. By the third scenario, her confidence was shattered. As she entered the final simulation chamber, she found Jason waiting. Last chance, he said, handing her what looked like a targeting visor and a strange, bulbous weapon she didn't recognize. This one's different. It's about instinct, not training. The simulation began. A swarm of holographic insectoid creatures descended from all directions. Vera raised the weapon, and something unexpected happened. The targeting interface connected with her brain in a way that felt natural, intuitive, as if the weapon was an extension of her thoughts. She fired. The energy pulses curved and split, each finding a target with uncanny precision. Vera moved through the simulation in a trance-like state, the weapon responding to her intentions rather than her physical input. When the lights came up, she found herself breathing hard, exhilarated. Jason stood at the observation window, his expression unreadable. "What was that?" she asked as he entered the chamber. "Neural adaptive targeting system. Most species can't use it. Their brains can't process the feedback loop." He studied her with newfound interest. Azurians, apparently, are an exception. Later, as the recruits gathered for assessment, Commander Hayes made his announcements with characteristic bluntness. Most were assigned to basic combat roles or rejected outright. When he reached Vera's name, he paused. "Lex, Neural Weapons Specialist. Report to Summers for specialized training." The dismissal was immediate, but Vera caught the surprised glances from the other recruits. As the crowd dispersed, she approached Jason, who was deep in conversation with Hayes and another officer she didn't recognize. "Already lost the Helios team," the unknown officer was saying, his voice low but urgent. "Whatever's down there, it's not just some anomaly. It hunts." "All the more reason we need someone who can handle the neural suite," Jason replied. "If conventional weapons don't work." They noticed her approach and fell silent. "Congratulations, Specialist," Hayes said curtly before walking away, the other officer following. "What was that about?" Vera asked once they were alone. "What exactly are we hunting?" Jason hesitated. "Above your clearance for now, but you earned your place today." He gestured toward the mess hall. "Let's get some food. We can discuss your training schedule." The Vanguard's mess was surprisingly comfortable, more like a proper restaurant than the utilitarian space Vera had expected. As they ate, Jason explained more about neural weapons technology and why her aptitude was so valuable. "Most humans can't use them effectively," he admitted. "Our brains aren't wired for it. Those who can usually suffer neurological damage after prolonged use. And Azurians don't? Your species has a different neural architecture, more adaptable." He leaned forward, his expression serious. "That's why Hayes approved your recruitment so quickly. We need your abilities." "For this mysterious mission you won't tell me about," Vera challenged. Jason's eyes met hers and something in them shifted. "I want to tell you, but there are protocols." The intensity of his gaze made her heart rate quicken. There was something building between them, an attraction that went beyond mere physical appreciation. His concern for her seemed genuine, his interest more than professional. "Then tell me something else," she said, her voice softer. "Why did you really recruit me? There must be other Azurians with more combat experience." "Not in this sector," he paused, then added, "and none of them looked at me the way you did in that bar." Heat rose to Vera's cheeks, turning her azure skin a deeper shade of blue. "And how was that?" "Like you were seeing past the mercenary to the man beneath." His hand moved across the table, fingers brushing against hers. "Am I wrong?" Vera didn't pull away. "No," she admitted, "you're not wrong." The tension between them was palpable, electric. Later, as Jason walked her to her assigned quarters, their conversation flowed more easily, punctuated by lingering glances and accidental touches. At her door, he paused. "Training starts at 0500. Get some rest." "Is that an order?" she asked, surprising herself with her boldness. His smile deepened. "Consider it strong advice." "And if I wanted different advice?" Vera stepped closer, the space between them charged with unspoken desire. Jason's response was to close that space, his lips finding hers in a kiss that started gentle but quickly blazed into something more urgent, more primal. His arms encircled her, strong and sure, as he pressed her against the door. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, Vera made her decision. She keyed open her quarters and pulled him inside. What followed was a revelation, a discovery of differences and similarities between their species that left Vera breathless and amazed. The human's passion, his strength, the sheer intensity of his desire, all of it overwhelmed her in the most exquisite way. Later, as they lay tangled in her bunk, Vera traced the scars on Jason's chest, each one a story he quietly shared. Stories of battles fought, comrades lost, worlds saved. "You should get some sleep," he murmured, kissing her forehead. "Tomorrow's training will be intense." "Worth it," she replied with a satisfied smile, nestling against him. Neither of them noticed the urgent message flashing on Jason's discarded comm unit. a warning that would soon shatter their brief moment of peace. The insistent beeping of Jason's comm unit finally penetrated their post-intimacy haze. Vera watched as he reluctantly disentangled himself from her embrace, his muscular form silhouetted against the dim light of her quarters as he reached for the device. "Summer's here," he answered, his voice instantly shifting to professional mode. Vera couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but Jason's expression darkened with each passing second. His jaw tightened, the muscles in his shoulders tensing visibly. "Understood. We'll be there in 10. He ended the call and turned to Vera, his earlier warmth replaced by grim determination. "Mission briefing's been moved up. Full team assembly in the command center." "Now?" Vera sat up, pulling the sheet around her azure form. "It's the middle of the night cycle. That's generally when emergency briefings happen." He was already pulling on his uniform with practiced efficiency. The situation's escalated. 15 minutes later, freshly showered and dressed in her new specialist gear, Vera stood beside Jason in the Vanguard's command center. The room buzzed with tension as Commander Hayes strode to the central holotable, his face a mask of controlled concern. "Intel update from Nexus 9, Hayes began without preamble. "The Helios team has been confirmed lost. No survivors." A ripple of unease passed through the assembled mercenaries. The Helios company was renowned for their elite operatives, veterans with decades of combat experience. "What could take out an entire Helios squad?" someone murmured. Hayes activated the holotable, projecting an image of a lush, mist-shrouded planet. "This is Erebus, a previously uncharted world in the Cygnus Expanse. 3 weeks ago, a mining survey team discovered unusual energy readings emanating from this region. The image zoomed in on a densely forested valley. They sent a small team to investigate. None returned. The commander's weathered fingers manipulated the controls, bringing up fragmented video footage. This was their last transmission." The holographic display flickered, showing a terrified human scientist. "Not what we thought. It's alive." Static interrupted before the feed continued. "Absorbs neural patterns, learns from each victim." More static. "Becoming more intelligent. Don't send anyone else." The transmission ended with a blood-curdling scream. "The corporation sent Helios to extract any survivors and secure whatever they found," Hayes continued. "Based on their final communications, we believe they encountered the same entity." He pulled up another recording, this one from a Helios combat helmet. The footage showed a chaotic firefight in a dimly lit cavern, energy weapons discharged against a shadowy, ever-shifting form that seemed to absorb the blast without effect. One by one, the Helios operatives fell silent, their neural signatures on the tactical display winking out. The last operative standing backed against a wall, switching to a different weapon, one Vera recognized as similar to the neural adaptive system she'd used in training. For a brief moment, the shadowy entity recoiled. Then the footage cut to static. "This," Hayes said grimly, "is why you're here, Specialist Lex. Conventional weapons are ineffective against this entity. It appears to be some form of neural predator. It consumes the minds of its victims, absorbing their knowledge and abilities." Vera felt the weight of every gaze in the room shift to her. "And you think I can stop it because I can use the neural weapons?" "You're our best shot," Hayes confirmed. "The corporation is offering triple our standard contract rate to neutralize this threat before it spreads beyond Erebus." Jason stepped forward. "Sir, with all due respect, Lex has barely begun her training. Sending her against something that wiped out Helios is a calculated risk," Hayes interrupted. "But our options are limited. The neural suite requires an operator with compatible neurophysiology. Among our current personnel, only Lex qualifies." "Then I should go alone," Jason argued, "at least until we know more about what we're facing." "Negative." Hayes' tone brooked no argument. "Full tactical team deployment. You'll lead Alpha Squad with Lex as your specialist. Beta and Gamma will establish a perimeter and fallback positions." As the briefing continued with logistics and tactical planning, Vera felt a cold knot of fear forming in her stomach. Just days ago, she'd been a stranded refugee with nothing but academic credentials. Now she was central to a mission against an entity that had decimated elite mercenaries. When the briefing concluded, Jason pulled her aside into an empty corridor. "I tried to keep you off this mission," he admitted, his voice low. "I noticed," Vera replied, a hint of irritation creeping into her tone. "I thought you believed in my abilities." "It's not about your abilities." His hand found hers, squeezing gently. "This thing, it's unlike anything we've encountered before. Even with your aptitude for the neural suite, you're still untrained." "Then train me," she challenged. "We have 48 hours before deployment, right?" "That's 48 hours to prepare." Jason studied her face, his expression softening. "You're not afraid?" "I'm terrified," Vera admitted. "But I also know I'm the best chance you have. Those neural weapons affected it, even if only temporarily." A reluctant smile tugged at his lips. "There's that Azurian confidence." "Human influence," she countered, stepping closer. "You're rubbing off on me." The double entendre wasn't lost on either of them. Despite the gravity of their situation, heat flared between them once more. "Speaking of which," Vera continued, her voice dropping to a whisper, "if we only have 48 hours, I can think of better ways to spend some of it than just training." Jason's eyes darkened with desire, but he maintained his professional demeanor in the corridor. "Training first, other activities. After, promise?" She traced a finger along his jawline. "Specialist Lex, are you attempting to seduce your commanding officer?" His tone was mock serious, but his eyes betrayed his interest. "Is it working?" His answer was a quick, stolen kiss that left her wanting more. "Training bay, 10 minutes, don't be late." As promised, the next 48 hours were intense. A grueling regimen of combat drills, neural synchronization exercises, and tactical simulations. Jason pushed her relentlessly, but Vera met every challenge with determination. Her natural aptitude for the neural weapon system improved rapidly under his guidance. And true to his word, they found other ways to release tension between training sessions. Moments of passionate connection that left Vera increasingly certain that what they shared went beyond mere physical attraction. On the eve of deployment, as they lay in his quarters, catching their breath, Vera finally asked the question that had been nagging at her. "Why did you really recruit me, Jason?" The truth this time. He propped himself up on one elbow, his expression serious as he traced patterns on her azure skin. "When I saw you in that bar, something just clicked. Call it instinct or intuition, but I knew you were special." He paused. "Finding out you could operate the neural suite was just confirmation." "Of what?" "That some things in this universe are meant to be." He kissed her softly. "Now get some sleep. Tomorrow we hunt a mind-eater." The descent to Erebus was rough atmospheric turbulence buffeting the Vanguard's dropship like an angry beast. Vera gripped her harness tighter, her knuckles turning a pale lavender against her azure skin. Across the hold, Jason caught her eye and gave her a reassuring nod. 2 minutes to touchdown, the pilot announced over the comm, sensors detecting unusual electromagnetic activity in the target zone. "Standard procedure, people," Jason addressed Alpha Squad, his voice steady and confident. "Perimeter formation on landing. Weapons hot, neural dampeners active." Vera checked her specialized gear one last time. The neural adaptive targeting system hummed against her temple, its interface syncing with her thought patterns. The primary weapon, officially designated the NA-7 Synaptic Disruptor, but nicknamed the Mind Spear by the Vanguard techs, felt oddly comfortable in her hands despite its alien technology. The dropship touched down with a bone-jarring thud. Ramps descended, and the squad moved out with practiced precision into the misty forests of Erebus. "Beautiful world," Sergeant Keller muttered beside Vera. "Shame about the brain-eating monster." The forest was eerily silent. No calls of native wildlife. No rustling in the underbrush. Just the soft crunch of the team's boots on the leaf-strewn ground and the occasional drip of condensation from the towering canopy above. "Life signs?" Jason asked over the tactical channel. "Negative, sir," replied Stewart, the team's sensor specialist. "But there's something weird about these readings. It's like the forest itself is pulsing." "Define pulsing," Jason ordered. "Neural activity, sir. Faint but present throughout the vegetation. Almost like a network," Vera finished, the realization dawning. "The plants are connected somehow." "Stay sharp," Jason warned. "We're one click from the Helios team's last position." They moved deeper into the forest, the mist growing thicker with each step. Vera felt a strange pressure building behind her eyes, subtle at first, then increasingly insistent. "Anyone else feel that?" she asked, adjusting her neural dampener. Feel what? Keller looked at her quizzically. Before Vera could respond, a piercing scream cut through the silence. The team froze, weapons raised. That was Torres, Jason said, his voice tight. Rear guard. They turned to find Torres, a veteran human mercenary with 3 campaigns under his belt, on his knees clutching his head. His screams had stopped, replaced by a low, keening moan. Something's in my head, he gasped. It knows. Everything. My daughter. How does it know about my daughter? Jason approached cautiously. Torres, stay with me. Focus on my voice. Torres looked up, his eyes wild with terror. She died in the Procyon conflict. I couldn't save her. His words dissolved into another scream as he collapsed, convulsing. Neural attack, Jason shouted. Dampeners to maximum. Vera felt the pressure intensify despite her dampener. Fragmented images flashed through her mind, memories that weren't hers. A laboratory, scientists arguing, something dark and fluid-like, pulsing in a containment field. Then abruptly the pressure retreated, as if whatever was probing had encountered something unexpected. Torres lay still now, his eyes open but vacant. Stewart knelt beside him, checking vitals. He's alive, but brain activity is minimal, she reported grimly. It's like something scooped out his consciousness. It's hunting us, Vera said, the realization chilling. Testing our defenses. Fall back to the drop ship, Jason ordered. New plan. But as they turned, the mist around them thickened, coalescing into vaguely humanoid shapes that blocked their retreat. Contact front! Keller opened fire, his conventional energy rifle discharging brilliant pulses that passed harmlessly through the mist forms. More shapes emerged from the forest, surrounding them. Unlike the formless mist, these were more defined and horrifyingly familiar. They resembled the Helios team members from the footage, but wrong somehow, their proportions subtly distorted, their movements jerky and unnatural. It's using their neural patterns, Vera realized aloud, creating projections from the minds it's absorbed. The pressure behind her eyes returned, stronger this time, probing her defenses. But unlike with Torres, the entity seemed confused by what it found in Vera's mind. It can't read me properly, she said to Jason. My Azurian neural architecture. It doesn't understand it. One of the Helios phantoms stepped forward, its features resolving into a grotesque approximation of a human face. When it spoke, its voice was a discordant chorus of dozens of different tones. Anomaly detected, non-standard neural pattern, fascinating. The pressure in Vera's mind intensified, becoming painful. She staggered, raising the mind spear instinctively. Get out of my head, she growled and fired. The neural weapon discharged not with light or sound, but with a ripple of pure thought energy. The phantom directly before her shuddered and dispersed like smoke in a strong wind. The pressure in her mind immediately lessened. It works, she called to Jason. The neural weapons affect it. The entity seemed to recoil, the mist forms retreating slightly. Then with frightening coordination, they surged forward again, converging on the squad from all directions. Fall back, Jason ordered. Defensive formation. Lex, keep firing. Vera unleashed the mind spear again and again, each discharge dispersing another phantom. But for each one she banished, 2 more emerged from the mist. The squad retreated step by step, conventional weapons providing covering fire that did little more than slow the entity's advance. Only Vera's neural weapons seemed to cause it actual distress. It's hurting us, she realized suddenly. Away from the dropship. Jason nodded grimly. Notice that too. It's smarter than we thought. A new phantom materialized directly in their path. This one more solid, more detailed than the others. It wore the uniform of a mining corporation executive, its features sharp and precise. Your weapons are impressive, it said in that same discordant chorus, but ultimately futile. I have absorbed the minds of scientists, soldiers, explorers. With each new consciousness, I grow, evolve. What are you? Jason demanded, his rifle trained on the phantom. I am the culmination of all I consume, it replied. A perfect intelligence, constantly expanding. Your minds will join the collective. Not today, Vera stepped forward, the mind spear humming with energy. The phantom tilted its head, studying her with unnerving intensity. You are different. Your neural patterns resist standard absorption protocols, a challenge I have not encountered before. Without warning, the pressure in Vera's mind changed character. No longer probing, but targeted, precise. Images flooded her consciousness, her homeworld burning, her family screaming, Jason lying dead at her feet. She recognized the tactic immediately. "It's using fears against us," she gasped, "but it doesn't understand mine properly. The images are wrong." Indeed, the Phantom's attempt to manipulate her fears had constructed scenarios that, while disturbing, didn't resonate with her Azurian psychology. The colors were wrong, the emotional context misaligned. "It can't get inside my head the way it did with Torres," she told Jason. "My alien thought patterns are confusing it." The Phantom's expression shifted to something like frustration. "Incompatible format. Adaptation required." "That's our advantage," Jason said, his mind working quickly. "It's evolved by absorbing human minds. It understands human neural architecture. But you're outside its experience." Vera nodded, a plan forming. "I can get close enough to use the Mind Spear at full power. If I can disrupt its core consciousness..." "Too dangerous," Jason objected. "We need a distraction." "Already on it, sir," Keller said, pulling something from his tactical vest. "Old-school flashbangs. Might not hurt it, but should confuse those projections long enough for Lex to make her move." Jason hesitated, then nodded. "Do it." As Keller prepared the distraction, Jason caught Vera's gaze. In that moment, volumes passed between them without words. Concern, determination, and something deeper that neither had yet named, but both felt intensely. "Don't die out there," he said simply. Vera managed a smile. "Not planning to. We have unfinished business, you and I." His answering smile was brief but genuine. "Damn right we do." "Ready?" Keller asked, flashbangs primed. Jason nodded. "On my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark." The flashbangs detonated with blinding intensity, scattering the phantom projections like startled birds. In that moment of confusion, Vera sprinted forward. The Mind Spear clutched tightly in her hands. Behind her, Jason and the remaining squad members laid down suppressive fire, their weapons cutting through the dissipating mist. 30 seconds, Lex," Jason called after her. "Then we're coming in." Vera didn't waste breath responding. The neural interface of her weapon pulsed against her temple, feeding her tactical data as she ran. The pressure in her mind intensified with each step, the entity's desperate attempts to breach her consciousness growing more frantic. A root snaked up from the ground, attempting to ensnare her ankle. She leapt over it without breaking stride, firing the Mind Spear at a phantom that materialized in her path. The neural energy rippled outward, dispersing the construct. Ahead, a dark opening yawned in the side of a moss-covered hill, a cave entrance partially hidden by hanging vines. The neural pressure emanated from within, a psychic beacon drawing her forward. Vera paused at the threshold, her tactical training warring with instinct. Entering an unknown confined space alone violated every protocol Jason had drilled into her. But the entity was retreating, consolidating. She could feel it. "Found the source," she reported over the comm. "Cave system, bearing 047. "Wait for backup," Jason ordered, his voice tight with concern. "No time," Vera replied. "It's pulling back, fortifying. This might be our only chance." Before he could object further, she plunged into the darkness, the Mind Spear's neural interface automatically enhancing her vision to compensate. The cave narrowed quickly, descending at a steep angle. Phosphorescent fungi clung to the walls, casting an eerie blue-green glow that reminded Vera of bioluminescent seas on her homeworld. The air grew warmer, heavy with moisture and a strange electric scent that made her skin tingle. The pressure in her mind shifted again, less aggressive now, more curious, probing, testing. "Fascinating specimen," a voice whispered directly into her thoughts. "Unknown neural architecture, resistant to standard absorption protocols." "Get out of my head," Vera growled, adjusting her dampener. "Why resist? I offer knowledge, experience, transcendence." The cave opened suddenly into a vast chamber, and Vera stopped short, momentarily stunned by what she saw. The cavern walls pulsed with life, a vast, interconnected web of neural tissue that glowed with the same phosphorescence as the fungi above. At the center, suspended from the ceiling, hung a massive structure resembling a brain, though far larger than any biological organ had right to be. Tendrils extended from it in all directions, connecting to the web that covered the walls. "Behold my true form," the voice in her mind announced with unmistakable pride. A perfect neural network, constantly growing, constantly evolving. Vera raised the mind spear, targeting the central mass. "You killed innocent people. I absorbed them, their knowledge, their experiences. They live on as part of me." "Not the same thing." "Perspective," the entity countered. "Your Azurian mind is unique, different, valuable. Join me willingly, and I will share with you the collective knowledge of all I have absorbed. Technologies beyond your imagination, secrets of the universe itself." Images flooded Vera's mind, star maps revealing shortcuts through space-time, weapon schematics that defied known physics, medical techniques that could extend life indefinitely. "Tempting," Vera admitted, fingers steady on the Mind Spear's trigger. "But I've seen what you do to those you absorb. Their personalities, their individuality, gone. A small price for enlightenment. Not mine to pay." She aimed at the central neural mass. "And not yours to take." The entity's tone changed, becoming harder. "Then I will take it by force." The neural pressure against her mind intensified 100-fold, a battering ram of pure psychic energy that threatened to overwhelm her defenses. Vera staggered, nearly dropping the Mind Spear as pain lanced through her skull. "Vera!" Jason's voice came through the comm, distorted by interference. "Status!" She couldn't respond, couldn't form words through the pain. The entity was everywhere now, probing every corner of her consciousness, searching for weaknesses. But in its desperate assault, it made a critical mistake. As it pushed against her mind, the connection became two-way. Suddenly, Vera wasn't just defending, she was pushing back, glimpsing fragments of the entity's own consciousness. What she saw horrified her. Hundreds of absorbed minds, their personalities subsumed but still present, trapped in a nightmarish collective. Scientists, soldiers, explorers, all consumed, their knowledge extracted, their experiences cataloged with cold precision. And beneath it all, a primal hunger, an insatiable need to grow, to consume, to expand. With a supreme effort of will, Vera broke the connection, gasping as her mind snapped back into the confines of her own skull. The Mind Spear hummed in her hands, responding to her neural distress. "You're not a god," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "You're a parasite." "I am evolution incarnate," the entity insisted. "Join me or perish." "I choose option 3. Vera adjusted the Mind Spear's settings to maximum output, a dangerous configuration that risked neural feedback, but one that would deliver a devastating burst of energy. The entity sensed her intention. Tendrils detached from the walls, whipping toward her with frightening speed. "Vera!" Jason's voice again, closer now. "We're coming in!" "Stay back!" she shouted, both over the comm and aloud. "I've got this!" The first tendril reached her, wrapping around her ankle. Immediately, she felt the entity attempting to establish a direct neural link, bypassing her dampener. Pain shot up her leg, her vision blurring as her consciousness began to fragment. In that moment of crisis, an unexpected image flashed through her mind. Jason, his eyes warm with affection, his hands gentle on her skin. The memory anchored her, gave her something to hold on to as the entity clawed at her thoughts. With a cry that was equal parts pain and defiance, Vera aimed the Mind Spear at the central neural mass and fired. The weapon discharged with a soundless pulse that she felt rather than heard, a wave of pure neural energy that rippled outward from the barrel. The tendrils around her ankle spasmed and withdrew. The pressure in her mind vanished. The central mass convulsed, its glow intensifying to painful brightness. A psychic scream tore through Vera's consciousness, a howl of rage and disbelief that threatened to shatter her sanity. Then abruptly, silence. The neural tissue covering the walls began to darken, the glow fading. The central mass sagged, its tendrils going limp. Vera stood, breathing hard, the Mind Spear still trained on the entity's core. Had she killed it, or merely stunned it? "Vera!" Jason burst into the chamber, rifle raised, his eyes quickly taking in the scene. "Are you all right?" Before she could answer, A weak pulse of neural energy emanated from the central mass. Not an attack this time, but something else. A final communication. Humans, the entity's voice whispered in her mind. Fainter now. So resourceful. So unpredictable. The only species I truly feared. The last of the phosphorescent glow faded, leaving only the tactical lights from Jason's team illuminating the chamber. It's done, Vera said, lowering the mind spear. I think it's dead. Jason approached cautiously, scanning the darkened neural tissue with his sensors. Readings confirm. Neural activity dropping to 0. He turned to her, relief evident in his expression. You did it. The adrenaline that had sustained her suddenly evaporated. Vera swayed on her feet, the mind spear slipping from her grasp. Jason caught her before she could fall, his strong arms enfolding her. I've got you, he murmured against her hair. I've got you. In the safety of his embrace, Vera allowed herself a moment of vulnerability. It was in my head, Jason. It showed me things, offered me knowledge. But you resisted, he said, his voice filled with admiration. That's more than most could do. She looked up at him, her turquoise eyes meeting his brown ones. I had something to come back to. Understanding passed between them, a connection deeper than words could express. In the midst of danger and darkness, they had found something unexpected in each other, something worth fighting for. As the team secured the chamber and prepared to extract, Vera couldn't help but wonder at the entity's final words. Of all the species it had encountered, humans were the ones it feared. Not for their technology or their weapons, but for their unpredictability, their adaptability, their humanity. The extraction from Erebus was swift and efficient. With the entity neutralized, Commander Hayes ordered an immediate evacuation before the planet's unpredictable weather patterns could trap them on the surface. The injured Torres was stabilized in a medical stasis pod, his vacant expression haunting the team as they departed. Back aboard the Vanguard's ship, the Relentless Pursuit, Vera underwent a thorough neural scan in the medical bay. Dr. Eliza Roberts, the ship's chief medical officer, studied the results with a furrowed brow. Fascinating, she murmured, adjusting her display. Your neural activity shows unusual patterns, almost like echoes. Vera sat on the examination table, fighting a persistent headache. Echoes? Residual neural patterns that aren't your own, Stewart explained. When you connected with the entity, it seems some of its absorbed knowledge transferred to you. Is it dangerous? Vera asked, a chill running through her. Not immediately life-threatening, but potentially destabilizing. These foreign memories could cause cognitive dissonance, personality fragmentation. Stewart trailed off, noticing Vera's alarmed expression. But your Azurian neural architecture seems to be compartmentalizing the intrusions rather effectively. As if on cue, a flash of unfamiliar memory surged through Vera's mind. A laboratory she'd never seen, scientists discussing a containment protocol she couldn't possibly know. The vision was so vivid, she could smell the antiseptic air, feel the weight of a data tablet in hands that weren't hers. I just saw, she began, then shook her head. It was like I was someone else. A scientist, I think. Stewart nodded grimly. The entity's victims. Their memories are inside you now. Before Vera could process this disturbing revelation, the medical bay door slid open. Jason entered, his face drawn with fatigue, but brightening at the sight of her. How's our hero? He asked, approaching the examination table. Complicated, Stewart answered before Vera could speak. She's experiencing memory transference from the entity. I need to run more tests. Jason's expression darkened. Is she in danger? Not immediately, but... Then it can wait, he interrupted. Hayes wants a full debriefing in 10 minutes. Stewart looked like she wanted to object, but merely nodded. Report back afterward. This requires monitoring. As they walked through the ship's corridors toward the command center, Vera noticed something odd about Jason. His gait was slightly off, a barely perceptible stiffness in his movements. When she glanced at his face, she caught a momentary blank expression, as if he'd briefly forgotten where he was. Jason? She touched his arm. Are you all right? He blinked, his focus returning. Just tired. It's been a hell of a day. But Vera's instincts, sharpened by her recent experiences, sensed something more. You're not just tired. Something's wrong. Jason stopped walking, checking that they were alone in the corridor. His shoulders sagged slightly. I didn't want to worry you, not with everything you're going through. Tell me, she insisted. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration she'd come to recognize. When I found you in that cave, I felt something, a presence. Just for a moment, but he met her gaze directly. I think part of it got into me, Vera. The confession hit her like a physical blow. The entity? A fragment, maybe. I'm experiencing gaps, moments where I'm not quite myself. His voice remained steady, but fear flickered in his eyes. I haven't told Hayes yet. If he thinks I'm compromised, he'll quarantine you, Vera finished. Or worse. The implications were terrifying. If the entity had transferred a portion of itself into Jason, it could potentially regain strength, take control, spread to others. The threat they thought they'd eliminated might only be dormant. Yet even as fear gripped her, another foreign memory surfaced in Vera's mind. Technical specifications for a neural purging procedure developed by scientists the entity had absorbed. The knowledge felt alien yet accessible, like reading a familiar language written in an unfamiliar script. I might be able to help you, she said slowly. These memories I'm getting, they include scientific knowledge, medical procedures, things the entity learned from its victims. Hope flickered across Jason's face. You think you can get it out of me? Maybe, but we need time and privacy. She glanced toward the command center. After the debriefing, meet me in my quarters. The debriefing was mercifully brief. Hayes was satisfied with their report of the entity's destruction, though concerned about Torres's condition. The medical team had detected minimal neural activity, enough to maintain basic functions, but his consciousness appeared to have been completely absorbed by the entity before its destruction. Will he recover? Vera asked. Hayes exchanged a glance with Dr. Roberts. Unknown. We've never seen this kind of neural damage before. As the meeting concluded, Stewart pulled Vera aside. I've been analyzing the forest samples we collected. There are traces of neural tissue throughout the ecosystem, smaller fragments of the entity. If they're not completely eradicated, they could potentially regenerate. How long do we have? Hard to say. Days, maybe. We need a permanent solution before we leave this system. The weight of responsibility settled heavily on Vera's shoulders. Not only did she need to help Jason, but she also had to find a way to prevent the entity from regenerating on Erebus. Later, in the privacy of her quarters, Vera and Jason sat facing each other on her bunk. The intimate setting reminded her of their night together before the mission. A lifetime ago, it seemed now. I need to establish a neural link, she explained, setting up a modified version of her weapon's interface. It's risky. If the fragment senses what we're doing, it might fight back. Jason took her hands in his touch grounding her. I trust you. The simple declaration warmed her in ways she couldn't articulate. Despite everything they'd been through, or perhaps because of it, the connection between them had deepened into something profound. This might hurt, she warned, placing the neural interface against his temple. As the connection established, Vera felt herself drawn into Jason's consciousness. His mind was structured differently from hers, more linear, more compartmentalized. She navigated through his thoughts with careful precision, searching for anomalies. There, a dark spot, a corruption in his neural patterns. The entity fragment had nestled deep in his limbic system, where emotions and memories intertwined. It was small but growing, feeding on his neural energy. Vera prepared to deploy the purging protocol she'd gleaned from the transferred memories, but hesitated. The procedure was invasive, potentially damaging. If she made a mistake, Jason sensed her hesitation through their link. Do it, his thoughts urged. Whatever it takes. Drawing on courage she didn't know she possessed, Vera initiated the procedure. The fragment reacted violently, sending waves of pain through their connected minds. Jason's body convulsed, but he maintained the link through sheer force of will. In that moment of crisis, as their minds fought together against the invading presence, something unexpected happened. The boundaries between them blurred. Memories flowed freely. His childhood on Earth, her youth on Azuria, his first combat mission, her years at the Xenobiology Academy, their recent intimate encounters, seen from both perspectives simultaneously. The fragment, caught in this flood of shared consciousness, couldn't maintain its cohesion. It dissolved, absorbed not by either of them, but by their combined neural activity. When Vera finally broke the connection, they were both gasping, drenched in sweat. Jason looked at her with wonder. "What just happened?" he asked hoarsely. "I'm not sure," Vera admitted, "but I think it's gone." He touched his temple, his expression one of cautious relief. "I feel clearer, like a fog has lifted." Vera nodded, understanding perfectly. "We should both get scanned to be sure." But neither of them moved. The intensity of what they just shared, the complete mental intimacy, had created a bond beyond physical attraction. They had seen each other's minds, experienced each other's memories. There was no hiding, no pretense possible between them now. "I've never felt anything like that," Jason said softly. "It was like we were one person," Vera finished. "I know." Their eyes met, and in that moment words became unnecessary. Jason leaned forward, his lips finding hers in a kiss that felt both familiar and entirely new. Their bodies remembered each other, but now their minds did too, creating a harmony that transcended physical pleasure. Later, as they lay together in the narrow bunk, Vera's thoughts turned to the remaining problem. We still need to deal with the fragments on Erebus. Jason traced patterns on her azure skin, his touch sending pleasant shivers through her. "Any ideas from those borrowed memories?" Vera closed her eyes, sifting through the alien knowledge in her mind. "Actually, yes. I think I know exactly what we need to do." "Absolutely not," Jason said, his voice firm as he paced the small confines of Vera's quarters. "It's too dangerous." Vera sat cross-legged on her bunk, the neural interface components spread before her as she made modifications. "It's the only way to ensure all fragments are eliminated. By using yourself as a living conduit for a neural disruptive pulse?" Jason stopped pacing to look at her directly. "The energy required could fry your brain." "My Azurian neural architecture can handle it," she countered, though with less certainty than she projected. "The entity's memories include detailed physiological data on my species. The scientists it absorbed had studied us extensively." Jason knelt before her, taking her hands in his. "There has to be another way." "There isn't." Vera met his gaze steadily. "The fragments are already beginning to reconnect. Dr. Roberts' latest scans show neural activity spreading through the forest. If we don't act quickly, we'll be facing the same threat all over again, possibly stronger than before." The argument continued as they brought their plan to Commander Hayes. The veteran mercenary listened silently as they explained the situation and Vera's proposed solution, using the ship's terraforming equipment to generate a targeted neural disruptive pulse, channeled through her unique neural architecture to eliminate all traces of the entity throughout Erebus's ecosystem. "And the risk to you?" Hayes asked when they finished. "Significant," Vera admitted, "but manageable." "Bullshit," Jason interjected. "The energy required could kill her or permanently damage her mind." Hayes studied them both, his weathered face unreadable. "And you're willing to take that risk, Specialist Lex?" "I am," she replied without hesitation. "Why?" The question was simple but penetrating. Vera considered her answer carefully. "Because I've seen what this entity does, what it takes. The minds it's absorbed are still aware in some way, trapped. I can feel them in the memories I've received." She paused. "And because if fragments remain and regenerate, it won't stop with Erebus. It will spread, consume, grow. No one should suffer that fate." Hayes nodded slowly. "Noble, but I don't sacrifice my people needlessly." He turned to the ship's chief engineer. "Alvarez, is there any way to modify the pulse generator to work without a biological conduit?" The engineer shook his head. "Not with our current equipment. The pulse needs to be calibrated to the entity's specific neural frequency. Without Specialist Lex's connection to those patterns, we'd be firing blind." "What about reducing the power?" Jason suggested. "Multiple smaller pulses instead of one large one?" "Ineffective," Vera said. "The fragments would adapt after the first pulse. It has to be one concentrated burst." Hayes fell silent, weighing the options. Finally, he looked up. "We proceed with Specialist Lex's plan, but with modifications. Alvarez, I want every possible safety measure incorporated. Summers, you'll oversee the operation personally." His gaze hardened. "And at the first sign of danger to Lex, you pull the plug." That's an order. Yes, sir, Jason replied, relief evident in his voice. Preparations moved quickly after that. The ship's terraforming equipment, normally used to adjust planetary atmospheres for colonization, was repurposed into a neural pulse generator. Vera worked alongside Alvarez, her borrowed scientific knowledge proving invaluable as they calibrated the system. The night before the operation, Vera and Jason retreated to his quarters. Neither spoke much, both acutely aware of what tomorrow might bring. Their lovemaking that night was different, slower, more tender, each touch infused with emotions too complex for words. Afterward, as they lay entwined, Jason finally voiced the fear he'd been holding back. "I can't lose you," he whispered against her hair. "Not when I've just found you." Vera traced the contours of his face with gentle fingers. "You won't. I'm stronger than I look." "I know how strong you are. That's not what worries me." He caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. "It's that you're willing to sacrifice yourself without hesitation." "Isn't that what humans do?" she asked softly. "Put themselves at risk for others. It's one of the things I admire most about your species." Jason smiled despite himself. "Using my own humanity against me. That's fighting dirty." "I learned from the best." She kissed him, a promise in the gesture. "I'm coming back to you. Count on it." The next morning they returned to Erebus. The pulse generator was set up at the cave entrance, where they had first encountered the entity's core. Vera sat cross-legged before it, neural interfaces attached to her temples and the base of her skull. "Neural link established," Alvarez reported from his monitoring station. "Calibration at 93% and holding." Vera closed her eyes, focusing on the connection. She could feel the entity's fragments scattered throughout the ecosystem, faint echoes of the consciousness she had faced. They were growing, learning, beginning to reconnect. "Ready when you are, Specialist," Hayes said from the command position. Vera nodded, initiating pulse sequence. The generator hummed to life, energy building in its core. Vera felt the power flow into her, through her neural pathways, amplifying and focusing. Pain flared behind her eyes, but she pushed through it, directing the energy toward the entity's neural frequency. "Power at 40%, Alvarez called out. "Neural load increasing." Jason stood beside her, one hand on her shoulder. "Vitals still stable," he reported, though the tension in his voice betrayed his concern. 60%, Alvarez continued. 70. The pain intensified, becoming a white-hot lance through Vera's skull. She gritted her teeth, maintaining her focus. Through the neural link, she could sense the fragments reacting, attempting to flee or shield themselves. 85%, neural load approaching critical. "Vera," Jason's voice cut through the pain. "We need to abort." "No," she gasped. "Almost there." 90%, neural pathways showing signs of stress. With a supreme effort of will, Vera channeled the building energy, shaping it into a precise waveform that matched the entity's neural signature exactly. In her mind's eye, she could see the pulse expanding outward from her position, sweeping through the forest, the caves, the very soil of Erebus. "Pulse away," Alvarez shouted. A silent wave of energy erupted from the generator, passing through Vera and expanding in all directions. Where it touched the entity's fragments, they simply unraveled, their neural patterns disrupted beyond recovery. Through the link, Vera felt each fragment dissolve, each echo of the entity fade into nothingness. With them went the trapped consciousnesses of its victims, not destroyed, but finally released. 100% discharge, Alvarez reported. "Pulse complete." Vera slumped forward, exhausted beyond measure. Jason caught her before she could hit the ground, cradling her against his chest. "Neural activity throughout the ecosystem dropping to 0, Stewart confirmed from her scanner. "It worked. The entity is gone." "Vera?" Jason's voice seemed to come from very far away. "Stay with me." She wanted to respond, to tell him she was fine, but darkness claimed her before she could form the words. Vera awoke in the medical bay of the relentless pursuit, the familiar hum of the ship's engines a comforting backdrop. Jason sat beside her bed, his head drooping in sleep, one hand still holding hers. "He hasn't left your side," Dr. Roberts said softly from the other side of the bed. 3 days straight." 3 days? Vera's voice was hoarse from disuse. Stewart nodded. "You've been in a healing coma. Your neural pathways suffered significant strain, but your Azurian physiology is remarkably resilient. You'll make a full recovery." At the sound of her voice, Jason jerked awake. Relief flooded his features when he saw her conscious. "You're back." "I told you I would be," she replied with a weak smile. Later, after Stuart had completed her examinations and left them alone, Jason sat on the edge of Vera's bed, his fingers gently stroking her silvery white hair. "The entity?" she asked. "Completely eradicated. No traces left anywhere on Erebus." His expression softened. "You did it." "We did it," she corrected. "I wouldn't have survived without you anchoring me." A comfortable silence fell between them, broken only when Jason cleared his throat nervously. "So, what happens now?" he asked. "With us, I mean." Vera considered the question. What had started as a chance encounter in a dingy tavern had evolved into something neither of them had expected. She had mocked his tiny weapon, only to discover the true strength of humanity wasn't in their firearms but in their hearts, their courage, their determination, their capacity for connection. "I hear the Vanguard has an opening for a neural weapons specialist," she said finally, "and I find myself in need of employment." Jason's smile was like the sunrise. "The pay is terrible, the hours are worse, and your commanding officer is a hard-ass." "True," she agreed, reaching up to trace the line of his jaw, "but the benefits are substantial." His laugh was warm and genuine as he leaned down to kiss her. "Commander Hayes already approved your permanent assignment. Said anyone crazy enough to channel a neural pulse through their brain to save a mission is Vanguard material." "High praise." "The highest." He grew serious. "There's something else. The neural scans show the entity's memories are still in your mind, but dormant now, organized, accessible without being intrusive." Vera nodded, having sensed this herself. "A library of knowledge from dozens of brilliant minds?" "Knowledge that could be invaluable." Jason took her hand. "Hayes has already received offers from 3 different research institutions wanting to interview you." "I'm not interested in becoming a lab specimen," she said firmly, and Hayes told them exactly that. His smile returned. "But there might be a way to use what you've gained on your own terms. The Vanguard occasionally takes research contracts, dangerous ones that regular scientists won't touch." The possibility intrigued her, a way to use her unique situation for good, while remaining with the team, with Jason, that had become so important to her. "I'd like that," she said softly. As they discussed the future, Vera marveled at the strange path that had brought her here. From stranded refugee to neural weapons specialist to potential xenoscientific researcher, all in the span of a few weeks. And through it all, the constant had been the human beside her. The man who had first mocked her ignorance of weapons, then shown her that the most powerful forces weren't measured in firepower, but in courage, sacrifice, and connection. "You know," she said, a mischievous glint in her turquoise eyes, "I never did properly apologize for mocking your tiny weapon that first day." Jason raised an eyebrow, his expression equally playful. "As I recall, you've since become quite familiar with all my weapons, large and small." "True," she agreed, pulling him closer, "but I think I need a refresher course. As soon as Dr. Roberts clears me for strenuous activity." His answering kiss was a promise of things to come, adventures, challenges, and discoveries they would face together. Whatever the future held, they would meet it as they had met the entity, with courage, determination, and the unshakable bond they had forged in the face of darkness.